You see, there comes a time when your silence becomes your strength. When you stop explaining yourself to someone who was never really listening in the first place, something shifts, something powerful. You stop giving a damn, not because you don't care, but because you've learned that your peace is too expensive to be wasted on someone who couldn't appreciate your presence when they had it. And it's in that silence, yes, the calm, unapologetic silence, that they start to feel the weight of everything they never said, everything they took for granted, everything they assumed would always be there. It's funny how people don't hear you until you stop talking. They don't see you until you stop showing up. They don't value your presence until your absence becomes a mirror reflecting every moment they missed an opportunity to love you better, to respect you deeper, to hold you closer. When you stop giving a damn, you're no longer trying to fix what didn't break because of you. You're not chasing validation. You're not begging for clarity. You're not handing over your worth for a moment of attention. You're simply done. And that's when it happens. That's when his world starts shaking. Not because you shouted, not because you slammed the door, but because you didn't say anything at all. You just stopped. You stopped replying. You stopped reaching. You stopped explaining yourself to someone who chose not to understand you. That's when he starts losing his mind. Not because you were angry, but because you were calm. Not because you wanted to hurt him, but because you finally started healing yourself. You stopped reacting. You started protecting your energy. You realized that no one is worth losing your peace for. And now that silence, that stillness, it speaks volumes. It says, I've found my worth. It says, I no longer place my value in your hands. It says, I've come home to myself. And the more he sits in that silence, the more it screams. Because now he's the one with the questions. Now he's the one overthinking. Now he's the one replaying everything you used to say, everything you used to do, everything he thought he could get away with. And he starts to miss the very things he once ignored. The texts, the warmth, the support, the presence that was always steady until it wasn't. You didn't have to make a scene. You didn't have to announce your exit. You simply stopped giving a damn. And that's what made all the difference. Because sometimes the most powerful thing a woman can say is nothing at all. You know what really shakes a man to his core? It's not the argument. It's not the tears. It's not the desperate attempts to hold on. No. It's the moment he realizes that the woman who once gave him all her attention no longer flinches when he walks in the room. It's when he senses that your energy has shifted, not in bitterness, but in freedom. It's the moment he realizes he's no longer the center of your thoughts. That's when the regret begins to crawl in. Not immediately, not all at once, but slowly, like a weight pressing on his chest when he's alone in the silence of his own mind. You see, when you stop giving a damn, you stop feeding his ego. You stop making excuses for his neglect. You stop being the one to initiate the call, send the text, show up first, apologize first, love first. And for a man who is used to you always showing up, your absence begins to echo. It becomes loud. It becomes undeniable. Because it's not that he didn't notice your worth. He did. He just didn't believe you would ever stop offering it to him so freely. He thought you would always be there, waiting, hoping, trying. But when you stop giving a damn, something powerful happens inside of you. You reclaim your identity. You remember who you were before you tried to shrink yourself for the comfort of someone who didn't know how to hold your light. You begin to glow, not for him, but for yourself. And when a woman starts glowing for herself, it burns something inside the one who took her for granted. It ignites a panic because now he knows he's not in control anymore. Now, you're not available on demand. You're not accessible like you used to be. You're not that open book he once flipped through without reading the pages. And now he's flipping through the chapters in his mind, wondering when it changed, how he didn't see it coming, and why he can't stop thinking about the woman who finally got tired of being an afterthought. And that's the irony. He didn't take you seriously when you cared. But now that you've stopped giving a damn, now that you've taken your power back, he's losing his mind. He's watching you grow, watching you glow, and realizing you were the best thing he never truly appreciated. And that realization, that's the moment it starts to hurt him. Because now he wants what he can't reach. Now he misses what he pushed away. Now he regrets what he treated as optional. But you're not looking back anymore, because peace tastes better than any apology he could ever offer. The moment he starts to see you unbothered, moving on, not reacting, that's when his world begins to crack. See, a lot of men don't truly value peace until they lose the woman who brought it. When you were there, always trying, always explaining yourself, always waiting for him to change or appreciate you, he got comfortable, too comfortable. He believed you'd always be there, no matter how little he gave, no matter how much you withdrew, because your love was consistent. But what he didn't understand was this: even the strongest woman has a limit. Even the most loving heart can grow cold from repeated neglect. And when you finally reach that breaking point, not with yelling, not with tears, but with silence, that's when it hits him. When you stop posting about the pain, when you stop reaching out, when you stop showing that you care, whether he notices you or not, something inside him shifts. He starts to wonder, starts to worry. Why is she so quiet? Why isn't she fighting for this anymore? Because the truth is, most men don't fear your anger. They fear your indifference. That cold silence, that's what shakes him. That's what breaks him. When he sees you no longer reacting, no longer begging for a response, no longer needing closure, he realizes that you've healed in a way he can't reach anymore. You've built a life without him at the center, and that realization can be unbearable. Because now you're living, laughing, glowing, and he's no longer the reason. That stings. That emptiness he once tried to fill with ego, now it's echoing back at him. Now he starts looking at your social media differently. He rewatches your stories. He lingers on your photos. And he starts to realize he lost something he didn't even understand while he had it. And here's the truth. He doesn't miss the version of you he neglected. He misses the version of you that gave freely, that loved unconditionally, that saw potential in him when he didn't even see it in himself. But he lost that version the moment you realized your worth wasn't negotiable. And now the silence speaks louder than words ever could, because peace is power. And the day you chose peace over proving your point, that's the day he finally understood what he lost. When you stop explaining yourself, when you stop chasing clarity from someone who was never willing to give it in the first place, that's when the shift happens. That's when the power dynamic flips. Because for so long he relied on your confusion, he fed off your need for closure. Every unanswered text, every half-hearted apology, every hot and cold behavior, those were tools used to keep you uncertain, to keep you questioning your value, and to keep you tethered to the idea that maybe one day he would finally choose you the way you were choosing him. But the truth is, some people don't change when they hurt you. They change when they lose access to your energy. And when you finally decide you're done explaining your worth, done trying to convince someone to see you, love you, or treat you right, that's when he starts noticing everything he ignored. He starts to remember the way you used to look at him with hope. He starts hearing your voice in the silence. He starts feeling the absence of your presence in places he used to take for granted. It's in the moments when you stop trying to make him understand what he broke that he starts seeing the cracks. Not because he suddenly grew, but because the noise of your pain is gone. And now, all he's left with is the sound of his own thoughts. The guilt starts creeping in, the memories become sharp, and suddenly he wants to talk. He wants to check in. He wants to know how you're doing, not because he's ready to give you what you always deserved, but because your silence is louder than your love ever was. See, silence is misunderstood. It's not weakness. It's not passive. It's powerful. It means you're no longer begging to be heard. It means you've outgrown the version of you that thought love meant explaining, convincing, proving. Real love never needs convincing. It shows up. It's clear. It creates peace, not confusion. So when you stop explaining and start healing, that's when he starts missing you. Not just the person, but the peace you brought, the effort you gave, the comfort you created. He realizes you weren't asking for too much. You were simply asking the wrong person. And now that you've gone quiet, he finally has to sit with what he couldn't hear over the sound of your love. There comes a point where you stop answering the late night texts. You stop reacting to the vague "I miss you" messages. You stop giving second chances to the same person who keeps proving they never deserved the first one. That moment when you finally set emotional boundaries is the moment he starts spiraling. You see, for a long time, he thought he could come and go as he pleased. He believed your heart was a revolving door, always open, always waiting. And the reason he believed that was because every time he disappeared and came back with crumbs, you made a meal out of them. You welcomed him in with grace. You gave him warmth, forgiveness, access. But not because you were weak. No, because you were loving. You were hopeful. You were holding on to the potential you saw in him, not the pattern he was showing you. But eventually something in you breaks in the best way possible. You stop negotiating with your own peace. You stop arguing with your instincts. You realize that boundaries aren't walls to keep love out. They're gates to protect the love within you. And when you finally draw that line and mean it, when you stop letting him cross it every time he gets lonely or bored or nostalgic, that's when he starts feeling the loss. That's when he starts understanding what he had, not because you said it louder, but because you finally stopped saying anything at all. He'll try. He'll test your limits. He'll push back to see if your boundary is real or just another warning. But when you stand firm, when you don't answer, don't entertain, don't soften your stance, his entire illusion of control shatters. He's no longer in charge of the rhythm. He can't pull you back with guilt, with flattery, or with memories. And for the first time, he has to confront the reality that he no longer has a seat at your table. That's the power of boundaries. They're not about shutting people out. They're about choosing yourself. They're about creating space for someone who values your worth without needing reminders. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do is to stop giving people the chance to hurt you the same way twice. When you finally stop allowing him back in, he doesn't just miss you. He starts losing his grip on the version of you who tolerated what no longer serves your future. There's a shift that happens when you stop explaining yourself, when you stop trying to justify why you deserve better, when you stop begging someone to see your value. At first, it might feel uncomfortable because for so long you were in a cycle of proving, defending, explaining. You were constantly trying to get him to understand your heart, your needs, your intentions. You thought if you just communicated a little more, cared a little deeper, waited a little longer, maybe then he'd change. Maybe then he'd choose you the way you've always chosen him. But then something clicks. You start to understand that love isn't something you should have to convince someone to give back. You realize that if someone can only value you when you're loud about your pain, they were never really listening in the first place. That if someone only acknowledges your worth when you're on the verge of walking away, they were never planning to honor it to begin with. So you go silent, not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. You stop feeding the dynamic with energy. You stop answering the baited texts. You stop performing for love. And it's in that silence, in that stillness, that he begins to feel your absence in a different way. He's no longer reacting to your words. He's reacting to the void you leave behind. And that's a kind of noise silence makes. It unsettles. It lingers. He starts to wonder why you're not chasing anymore, why you're not trying anymore, why you're not playing into the emotional tug of war that used to keep him secure. And the truth is, you're no longer participating in a game that cost you your peace. You're no longer trying to win over someone who never truly saw the prize in front of him. This is the moment he begins to unravel, because he's no longer in control of your emotions. It's no longer the center of your attention. And for someone who got used to your availability, your silence speaks louder than your tears ever did. It's not that you stopped loving him. It's that you started loving yourself more. And when a woman stops explaining and starts detaching, there's a spiritual power in that, a calm, unshakable strength that says, I don't need you to understand. I just need to protect my peace. And it's in that strength that you reclaim your voice without ever raising it again. There comes a day when the energy you used to give so freely begins to feel sacred, not because you're bitter, not because you're playing games, but because you realize what it costs to pour yourself into someone who doesn't know how to hold you. There was a time you would show up for him no matter what. No matter how many times he canceled, you still answered. No matter how long he disappeared, you still welcomed him back. You bent over backwards to keep the connection alive because somewhere deep down, you hoped that consistency would show him how much you cared. But the truth is, your energy became expected, not appreciated. Your kindness became his comfort zone, not his wake-up call. And the moment he noticed you pulling back, even slightly, the balance of power shifted. He felt the difference immediately, not in a loud or dramatic way, but in subtle things. You stopped being the first to text. You stopped rearranging your life to fit into his empty promises. You stopped filling in the gaps he never took the time to close. And that's when it started. That slow unraveling in his mind, that creeping realization that the attention he used to take for granted is no longer his to receive. That the woman who used to respond in minutes now takes her time, if she responds at all. That the emotional safety net he once leaned on is no longer there. And it hits different because he doesn't miss the relationship. He misses the version of you that tolerated what he gave. He misses the you that waited, forgave, and excused his behavior in the name of love. Now he's left questioning what changed? What did he do? But the truth is, it's not about what he did in one moment. It's about everything he consistently failed to do. He didn't see you because he assumed you'd always be there. And now that you're no longer so available, your absence becomes the loudest presence in his life. When a woman reclaims her energy, it's not just about pulling away, it's about realigning with what she truly deserves. You're no longer interested in proving your worth to someone who couldn't see it when it was standing right in front of him. You've shifted your focus inward, and that shift creates a silence he cannot ignore. And the more grounded you become in your peace, the more chaotic his world feels without you in it. That's the irony. The same man who told you that you were too much now feels lost without your light. Because once you stop overgiving, they finally feel the weight of what they've lost. When you finally stop giving a damn, you free yourself from the chains of expectation and disappointment that held you captive. It's not about playing hard to get or manipulating feelings. It's about reclaiming your power, your time, and your peace of mind. For too long, you might have been caught in the cycle of giving more than you receive, hoping that your effort would change the situation, hoping that your love would be enough to fill the gaps where respect and commitment were missing. But love without respect, without balance, is not love. It's a trap. And the moment you realize this, everything shifts. You start to see clearly. You notice how your energy was drained by trying to keep something alive that wasn't meant to be sustained by one person alone. You recognize how much emotional labor you carried, how many moments you silenced your own needs just to avoid conflict or keep the peace. When you stop giving a damn, you stop sacrificing your happiness for someone who didn't value it. You stop chasing after validation that was never coming. You stop waiting on someone who was too busy or too indifferent to show up fully. And that's when he begins to lose his mind, not because you've changed, but because you've stopped being his emotional safety net. When you stop bending, the tension builds. When you stop excusing the disrespect, the cracks in the foundation start to widen. The person who once had the comfort of your constant availability now faces the reality that you are no longer there on demand. That realization is powerful. It shakes up his sense of control, his assumptions about you, and his expectations of what he can get without giving. But more importantly, when you stop giving a damn, you send a clear message. Your worth is non-negotiable. You're no longer willing to settle for crumbs of affection or empty promises. You choose yourself over the exhausting effort of trying to fix something broken from the outside. You choose peace over chaos, self-respect over validation, freedom over frustration. And in that space, something incredible happens. Not only does he start losing his mind, but you begin to find yours. You reconnect with your inner strength, your clarity, and your self-love. You rediscover the joy of living on your own terms without waiting for someone else's approval. You become the person who attracts respect and love naturally because you no longer chase after it desperately. This shift is not just about what happens to him, it's about what happens to you. It's about growing beyond dependency and realizing that your happiness is your responsibility. When you stop giving a damn, you break free from the cycle of emotional exhaustion and you open the door to new possibilities. Possibilities where you are cherished, valued, and truly seen. So, let go of the need to constantly prove your worth to those who never appreciated it. Stop giving a damn about their opinions, their games, and their inconsistency. Stand firm in your power and watch how everything changes, not just in them, but more importantly, within yourself. When you stop giving a damn, something deeper begins to unfold within you. A powerful awakening of self-worth and emotional independence that transforms your entire outlook on life and relationships. You start to realize that your happiness doesn't depend on someone else's approval or attention. This is a crucial turning point because so often we tether our sense of value to how much someone else thinks about us, how often they reach out, or how they behave toward us. But in truth, your worth has nothing to do with external validation. It is an unshakable foundation you build from within. This realization doesn't come overnight. It's a gradual process of peeling away layers of conditioning and old habits that taught you to prioritize others' feelings over your own. When you finally embrace this, you begin to live from a place of authenticity. You stop pretending to be okay just to keep someone's attention. And you stop compromising your needs to avoid conflict. Instead, you create boundaries that protect your peace and honor your emotional energy. What's remarkable is how this shift impacts your relationships. When you are no longer desperate for approval, you naturally attract people who respect and value you because energy is contagious. When you love and respect yourself, others mirror that back to you. But if you keep clinging, chasing, or bending, you send a message that you tolerate less than you deserve treatment, and people will continue to treat you that way. It's not about being cold or indifferent. It's about being fiercely loving toward yourself. It's about recognizing that your time, your energy, and your heart are precious commodities. When you stop giving a damn, you start saying yes to yourself. You start investing your energy in your dreams, your growth, and your joy. And this is where true power lies. Not in controlling others, but in mastering your own emotional world. There's a kind of peace that comes with detachment. Not the unhealthy kind where you shut down your feelings, but the healthy kind where you choose what deserves your attention and what doesn't. You learn to let go of drama, toxicity, and emotional chaos. You start to focus on your goals, your passions, and the relationships that uplift and support you. And this change does not go unnoticed. The person who once had your undivided attention and emotional energy begins to feel your absence deeply. They sense your shift, your newfound confidence, and the fact that you no longer exist in their orbit just to serve their needs. This can be unsettling for them because the dynamic they were used to has changed. You've stepped into your power, and that disrupts their expectation. But the most important thing is what happens inside you. You become stronger, wiser, and more aligned with your true self. You realize that your peace is worth more than any momentary attention or validation from someone who never truly appreciated you. You begin to rewrite your story, not as someone who waits and wonders, but as someone who knows their worth and refuses to settle for less. This journey isn't always easy. It requires courage to face loneliness, to confront fears of rejection, and to embrace uncertainty. But the reward is priceless. A life where you are whole, where your happiness is self-generated, and where you are free to love and be loved on your terms. So embrace this freedom with open arms. Stop giving a damn about what doesn't serve you and watch how your world transforms, not because of them, but because of you. When you stop giving a damn, you reclaim your power, and in doing so, you open the door to a new kind of freedom, a freedom that many never experience because they remain trapped in emotional dependence and the constant need for validation. This final point is about recognizing that your life belongs to you alone. You are the author of your story, the captain of your ship, and the only person responsible for your happiness and fulfillment. Think about how much energy we waste trying to please others, hoping they notice us, trying to hold on to something or someone who isn't fully invested. That energy, once freed, becomes fuel for your own growth, your dreams, and your peace. The moment you let go of caring about how someone else views you or whether they miss you, you begin to invest fully in yourself. You prioritize your mental health, your emotional well-being, and your goals. And that investment pays dividends in ways you never imagined. This is not about shutting people out or being indifferent to love. It's about shifting your focus inward. When you stop seeking external approval, you start hearing your own voice clearly. You reconnect with your values, your desires, and your purpose. This inner clarity creates a magnetic confidence that no one can ignore, and it changes how people perceive you. Suddenly, you're no longer chasing, you're attracting. The person who once had your attention may begin to realize what they lost, but by then you've moved on to bigger and better things. There's also a profound lesson in self-respect here. When you care less about what others think and more about what you believe, you set standards for how you allow yourself to be treated. You become unwilling to settle for less than you deserve, and you become fearless in walking away from anything or anyone who doesn't honor your worth. This courage to walk away without looking back is the ultimate form of self-love. And while it might feel uncomfortable at first, this detachment is healing. It heals old wounds from past relationships where you may have been taken for granted or undervalued. It teaches you to trust yourself again, to believe that your happiness isn't dependent on someone else's feelings or actions. You discover that your peace is non-negotiable and that protecting your emotional space is the best gift you can give yourself. This transformation also helps you grow emotionally resilient. Life will continue to bring challenges and people will come and go. But when you stop giving a damn about things that don't serve you, you build a shield against unnecessary pain. You learn to rise above drama, manipulation, and emotional games. Instead, you focus on building a life filled with purpose, joy, and meaningful connections that enrich rather than drain you. Ultimately, this shift empowers you to live authentically. You no longer bend yourself out of shape trying to fit someone else's expectations. You stand firm in who you are, unapologetically. And in that authenticity, you find true peace and fulfillment. The people who matter will respect and love you for it. Those who don't are simply not meant to be part of your journey. So stop giving a damn about what drains your spirit. Choose yourself, live for your own happiness, and watch how your life transforms into something powerful, beautiful, and entirely yours.